If you don't get this thing off me in the next 30 seconds, human, I'm going to die in your doorway, and that's going to be really embarrassing for both of us. Ethan shot upright in bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. The dim emergency lighting of Station Helios 7 cast everything in shades of blue and shadow. But there was no mistaking the figure standing in his doorway. Vix. His alien roommate stood there, violet skin glistening with sweat, her long black hair disheveled and wild around her shoulders. Her normally confident golden eyes were wide with something between panic and mortification. Vix? What the? Ethan started, throwing off his blanket. Unzip it, human, she interrupted, stumbling forward into his quarters. Her hands clawed at the collar of her environmental suit, fingers trembling. The sealing mechanism, it's malfunctioning. I can't breathe. In the 3 months they'd been sharing this station quarters, Ethan had learned a few things about Vix's species, the Kailari. They came from Kalos, a humid jungle world with thick atmosphere. The environmental suits they wore on human standard stations weren't just for comfort. They regulated everything from moisture levels to atmospheric composition. And right now, hers was trying to kill her. Ethan was out of bed in a heartbeat, wearing only his sleep shorts as he crossed the small room. Up close, he could see the suit's collar constricting around her throat, the material designed to flex and seal now betraying its purpose. Hold still, he said, his engineer's mind clicking into gear despite his racing pulse. His fingers found the emergency release tab hidden beneath her collar, right where the manual said it would be. But the mechanism was stuck, fused by whatever malfunction had triggered the seal. Vix's breathing came in short, desperate gasps. Her hand grabbed his shoulder, nails digging in through his bare skin. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him. They'd been careful about contact, both species aware of how loaded even casual touch could be. The manual override, she wheezed. Back panel. Ethan moved behind her, finding the secondary zipper running down her spine. His hands worked fast, but not fast enough. The suit was collapsing inward, designed to protect against depressurization, but now doing the opposite. The zipper finally gave way. Vix practically fell out of the suit, gasping huge lungfuls of the station's recycled air. Ethan caught her by instinct, his arms wrapping around her to steady her. She was lighter than he expected, her body trembling against his chest. For a moment, neither of them moved. Ethan became acutely aware of several things at once. The warmth of her skin against his, the floral scent that clung to her hair, the way her heart pounded against his palm where his hand rested on her ribs, and most of all, how she wasn't pulling away. Vix lifted her head, golden eyes meeting his in the darkness. Her violet skin had darkened to something deeper, purple, almost indigo. He'd learned that was a Kailari blush. Thank you, she whispered, her voice rough from her struggled breathing. You saved my life, human. Ethan, he corrected softly, aware that she only called him human when she was flustered. My name is Ethan. She smiled then, small and vulnerable in a way he'd never seen from the usually confident alien researcher. Ethan. The moment stretched between them, loaded with something neither was quite ready to name. Then Vix stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. Without the suit, she wore only a thin black underlayer that left very little to imagination. I should go to medical, she said, not moving. Probably smart, Ethan agreed, also not moving. My quarters are right next door. They are. Another beat of silence. Ethan? Yeah? Don't tell anyone I called you human that many times just now. I have a reputation to maintain. The teasing note in her voice was back, but something underneath it had shifted. He grinned despite himself. Your secret's safe with me. Vix gathered her malfunctioning suit, holding it against her chest like a shield, and moved toward the door. She paused at the threshold, glancing back over her shoulder. Next time I need rescuing, she said, her voice dropping to something that made his stomach flip. I'll return the favor. Then she was gone, the door sliding shut behind her, leaving Ethan standing alone in his quarters, wearing nothing but sleep shorts and the lingering warmth of where she'd pressed against him. He sat down on the edge of his bed, running a hand through his hair. 3 months of carefully maintained professional distance, of polite conversations in the shared kitchen, of avoiding eye contact that lasted too long, all undone in 30 seconds of emergency and adrenaline. Ethan lay back down, but sleep was impossible now. His mind kept replaying the moment, the trust in her eyes when she'd grabbed him, the way she'd fit against his chest, The loaded silence that had said everything they'd both been trying not to say. Across the station, in her own quarters, Vix pressed her palm against the wall they shared, her heart still racing for reasons that had nothing to do with almost suffocating. What had she done? The next morning, Ethan discovered that saving someone's life at midnight makes breakfast incredibly complicated. He stood in the shared kitchenette of their quarters, waiting for his coffee to brew when Vix emerged from her room. She'd changed into her standard research uniform, a sleek black and silver outfit that somehow made her violet skin glow under the station's artificial lighting. Her long black hair was pulled back into a neat braid. She looked put together, professional, completely in control, except for the way she froze when she saw him, her golden eyes widening for just a fraction of a second. "Morning," Ethan said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere near awkward. "Good morning." "Ethan." She emphasized his name, and he remembered. She'd only started using it last night. Something about the way she said it made his coffee suddenly seem less interesting than watching her move around the kitchen. Vix opened the cooling unit, staring at its contents with unusual focus. "I see you've discovered my imported tarva fruit," she said, pulling out a container of the bright blue specimens he'd been eyeing for weeks. "I wasn't going to touch them without asking," he assured her. She glanced at him with a small smile. "What if I said you could touch them?" "Whenever you wanted?" The pause before "whenever" was deliberate. Ethan nearly choked on his coffee. "The fruit," Vix added innocently. "I meant the fruit." "What did you think I meant?" "Nothing. The fruit, obviously." He focused very intently on his mug. Vix moved closer, reaching past him for a plate. The proximity was unnecessary. The kitchen was small, but not that small. Her arm brushed his, and Ethan caught that floral scent again, stronger now in the morning light. "You know," she said conversationally, plucking a tarva fruit and biting into it. "On my world, when someone saves your life, there's a traditional debt that must be repaid." "Oh?" Ethan managed, watching juice from the fruit stain her lips darker purple. "The saved must serve the savior for one full cycle of their moon." She licked the juice from her lower lip, and Ethan forgot how to breathe. "That's about 47 of your Earth days. That seems specific. We're very traditional people." She took another bite, her eyes never leaving his. "Of course, a serve can mean many things. Cooking, cleaning, personal assistance." Another pause. "Very personal assistance." Ethan set his coffee down before he dropped it. "Vix, I'm teasing you, human." But her blush, that deepening violet to indigo shift, betrayed her. Mostly?" She moved away, settling at their small dining table with her fruit. "I do owe you, Ethan. That suit malfunction could have killed me. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't known where to find the releases, you would have figured it out," he said, joining her at the table. "Maybe. Maybe not." She looked down at her hands. "I was panicking. I couldn't think straight. All I could think was that I needed to get to you." The admission hung between them, heavier than she'd probably intended. "Why me?" Ethan asked softly. "Your lab partner is 3 doors down. The medical bay is closer." Vix was quiet for a moment, tracing patterns on the table with her finger. "I trust you," she finally said. "I know that sounds simple, but my people were warned about humans before we came to these stations. They said you were unpredictable, emotional, dangerous to get close to. And yet you moved in with one. And yet I chose you as a roommate," she corrected. "Do you know why?" Ethan shook his head. "Because when I first arrived during the station orientation, there was an incident in the docking bay. A cargo container came loose and everyone scattered. Everyone except you. You ran toward it, helped secure it before it could crush a maintenance worker." She met his eyes. "You didn't think. You just acted to help someone. That's when I knew the warnings were wrong." "Vix, so yes, when I couldn't breathe last night, I came to you. Because somewhere in the last 3 months, you became the person I trust most in this entire station." She stood abruptly, carrying her plate to the recycler. "Which is probably very foolish of me." "Why foolish?" She turned, and for a moment her expression was raw, unguarded. "Because trust is dangerous, Ethan. Especially between species." "Especially when what?" But she shook her head, the professional mask sliding back into place. "I have to get to the lab. We're running atmospheric simulations today." "Vix, wait." "Thank you again. For last night." She paused at the door. And Ethan? If you want some of that tarva fruit, help yourself. What's mine is yours. Then she was gone, leaving Ethan alone with his cold coffee and the distinct feeling that they'd been having two different conversations, one with words and one with everything else. He looked at the container of blue fruit she'd left on the counter, deliberately placed within his reach. What's mine is yours. On her world, he remembered reading. Sharing food was intimate, not just friendly, intimate, the kind of thing you did with family or... Ethan picked up one of the fruits, its skin cool against his palm, or with someone you were courting. He bit into it, the sweet tart juice exploding across his tongue, and wondered if Vix knew what she was really offering. In the research lab 3, sections away, Vix stared at her data screens without seeing them, her mind replaying every moment of their breakfast. Every word, every glance, every deliberate touch. Her colleague, Dr. Fenn, a older Kalari with silver-streaked hair, gave her a knowing look. You're distracted today. I'm fine. You're thinking about your human. He's not my... Vix stopped, realizing the denial was pointless. Is it that obvious? Only to anyone with eyes, Fenn said dryly. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. I can't. You know the protocols, the warnings. I know you're blushing every time someone mentions his name. I know you requested station quarters next to his specifically. And I know, Fenn added gently, that you're fighting something that might be worth surrendering to. Vix touched her throat where the suit had constricted last night, where Ethan's hands had worked to free her, gentle and sure. What if they're right? She whispered. What if getting close to a human only ends in heartbreak? What if it doesn't? That question followed Vix through the rest of her day, through her simulations and reports, through the hours until she knew Ethan would be back in their shared quarters. What if it doesn't? By the time she returned that evening, she'd made a decision. Sort of. Maybe. The door slid open, and she found Ethan in the kitchen again, this time actually cooking. The smell of garlic and herbs filled their quarters. You're making dinner, she observed. I figured after you offered me your fruit this morning, the least I could do was share my food. He glanced at her with a grin. Fair warning, human cooking might not live up to Kalari standards. I'm sure I can handle whatever you're serving. The double meaning was entirely intentional this time. Ethan's stirring faltered. Vix? Yes, Ethan. Are we doing what I think we're doing? She moved closer, drawn by something stronger than caution or protocol or warnings from her homeworld. That depends. What do you think we're doing? Playing a very dangerous game. Then yes, Vix said softly, reaching past him to steal a piece of vegetable from his cutting board, her shoulder brushing his arm. We absolutely are. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan learned that falling for an alien was both exactly like and nothing like falling for a human. It started small, or at least it seemed small. Vix began leaving things in the shared kitchen. A container of spiced nuts from her homeworld appeared next to his coffee maker. Then a bottle of fermented juice that tasted like star fruit and made him pleasantly dizzy after half a glass. Then fresh flowers, purple and black like her coloring, that filled their quarters with a scent that reminded him of rain. You know, Ethan said one evening, finding another gift, this time a small carved stone, on his desk. On Earth, when someone keeps giving you presents, it usually means something. Vix looked up from her data pad, the picture of innocence. Does it? How fascinating. What does it mean? You tell me. You're the xenobiologist. You've probably studied human courtship rituals. I may have read a paper or two. She set down her data pad, giving him her full attention. Her long black hair was loose tonight, cascading over her shoulders. But I find practical research much more valuable than theory. Subscribe for more stories like this. I could tell you academic observations about humans all day, but experiencing them? That's real knowledge. Ethan picked up the carved stone, running his thumb over its smooth surface. It was warm, like it had been held for a long time. And what have you learned from your practical research? That humans blush when flustered, just like Kalari. That you touch your hair when you're nervous. That you look at me when you think I'm not watching. She stood, crossing the small living space to stand in front of him. And that you haven't asked me to stop leaving you gifts, which means you understand exactly what they mean. Maybe I'm just being polite. You're many things, Ethan, but you're not just anything. She reached out, her violet fingers brushing his as she adjusted how he held the stone. On my world, carved stones like this are given to someone you want to build something with. Something permanent. His heart kicked against his ribs. Vix, you're scared, she said softly. I can see it. You want this, us, but you're scared. So am I. You don't seem scared. I'm terrified. Her golden eyes held his, vulnerable and honest. But I'm also done pretending I don't feel what I feel. Life is too short and space is too vast, and you're right here. Ethan set the stone down carefully and took her hand, properly this time, his fingers lacing through hers. Her skin was warmer than his, softer than he'd expected. Your people warned you about humans. Yes, they said we were dangerous. They did. Maybe they were right. Vix smiled, squeezing his hand. Oh, they were definitely right. You're the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to me, Ethan. You make me want to break every rule, ignore every warning, risk everything my people told me to avoid. She brought their joined hands up, pressing his palm against her cheek. And I've never been more certain of anything. They stood like that, in the quiet of their shared quarters, space stretching infinitely beyond the hull but feeling very small and intimate within these walls. I don't know how to do this, Ethan admitted. Date an alien, navigate cultural differences, figure out what's okay and what crosses lines I don't even know exist. Then we learned together. Vix turned her head, pressing a kiss to his palm that sent electricity racing up his arm. I've never done this either. Never wanted to, not until you. What changed? You saved me. And then you kept saving me, in small ways, every day. Making sure the kitchen temperature was comfortable for me. Learning which foods I could eat. Asking about my research not because you had to, but because you cared. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You saw me, Ethan. Not an alien, not a research opportunity, not a curiosity. Just me. Ethan cupped her face with both hands now, his thumbs tracing the high bones of her cheeks, watching her skin darken with that telltale blush. You're beautiful, you know that. He stroked the violet skin. The way you change color when I touch you, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Vix's breath caught. Ethan. Too much? Not enough. She covered his hands with hers. Never enough. The kiss, when it happened, was inevitable. Ethan leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. But Vix met him halfway. Her lips were softer than he'd imagined, warmer, tasting faintly of the spiced nuts she'd been eating earlier. It was gentle at first, exploratory, two different species learning the landscape of each other. Then Vix made a small sound in the back of her throat and pressed closer, her hands sliding up his chest to his shoulders, and gentle became something else entirely. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vix's skin had gone full indigo, the deepest blush he'd seen yet. So, Ethan said, slightly breathless, still scared? Absolutely terrified. She grinned. Let's do it again. The second kiss was less careful, more confident. Vix's fingers threaded through his hair, and Ethan's hands found her waist, pulling her closer. They stumbled backward, laughing against each other's mouths, until Ethan's back hit the wall. Wait, he gasped, pulling back just enough to speak. We should probably talk about this. About what we're doing, what it means. Ethan? Yeah? Stop overthinking. Vix kissed his jaw, his throat, the sensitive spot behind his ear that made him forget what he'd been about to say. We can talk later. Right now I just want to feel. And they did. They kissed until their lips were swollen, until Ethan had mapped every place that made Vix gasp, until she'd learned that his neck was sensitive and his lower back made him arch into her touch. They didn't go further. Not that night. Some line they both sensed held them back. Some unspoken agreement that they needed to be sure, needed to be ready. But when they finally settled on the couch together, Vix curled against Ethan's side with his arm around her shoulders. It felt more intimate than anything physical could have been. "Tell me about your world," Ethan said, his fingers trailing through her long hair. "The real stuff, not the data files." So Vix did. She told him about the jungle cities of Kalos, built into massive trees that stretched kilometers into the sky. About the bioluminescent festivals where entire forests would glow with coordinated light displays. About her family, 3 mothers, 2 fathers, the polyamorous family structure that was common among her people. "Wait," Ethan interrupted. 3 mothers? Kalari reproduction requires 3 genetic contributors, Vix explained. 2 provide the primary genetics, 1 stabilizes and enhances. It takes a village, as you humans say, quite literally. That's actually beautiful, it is. It also means I was raised to believe love doesn't have to be simple or traditional to be real. She tilted her head to look up at him. That loving someone from a different world, a different species, doesn't make it less valid. Your people might disagree. You said they warned you about humans. They warned me about getting hurt, about the complications, the difficulties, the risk. Vix sat up, turning to face him fully. But you know what they didn't warn me about? How right it could feel, how easy, how natural. Ethan pulled her back against him. Nothing about this feels easy, doesn't it? Right now, in this moment, does this feel difficult? He had to admit it didn't. Holding her felt like the most natural thing in the universe, like his arms had been designed specifically to fit around her. "Tell me about your world," Vix said. "Tell me about Earth," so Ethan did. He told her about oceans and mountains, about seasons changing and snow falling. About his small hometown and the sky full of stars he'd stared at as a kid, dreaming of touching them. About the day he'd left Earth for the academy, how his mother had cried and his father had tried not to. "Do you miss it?" Vix asked sometimes. "But right now," he kissed the top of her head. "Right now I'm exactly where I want to be." They talked until the station's lights dimmed for night cycle, until they were both yawning and struggling to keep their eyes open. Finally, reluctantly, Vix stood. "I should go to my quarters," she said, but she didn't move toward the door. "You could stay," Ethan offered, then quickly added, "just to sleep, on the couch, or I could take the couch." "I just mean," Vix pressed a finger to his lips, silencing his rambling. "I know what you mean. And I want to. But not yet," she kissed him softly. "When I stay, I want us both to be sure it's what we want, not just what we're feeling in the moment. You're the smart one in this relationship." "Relationship?" She raised an eyebrow, but she was smiling. "I mean, if you want. We could—" "Yes," Vix interrupted. "Yes, I want. Yes, we are. Yes to all of it, Ethan." He grinned, pulling her in for one more kiss. "Good, that's really good." At her door, she paused. "Ethan, tomorrow would you like to come to the observation deck with me? There's supposed to be a meteor shower." "Is this a date?" "Very much so." "Then I'd love to." Vix disappeared into her room, and Ethan stood there grinning like an idiot for a full minute before retreating to his own quarters. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Every kiss, every touch, every word. Across the wall, he knew Vix was doing the same. They were really doing this. Against all warnings, all logic, all the reasonable concerns about interspecies relationships they were falling in, of. And Ethan had never been more certain of anything in his life. The station's sirens woke them at 0300 hours. Ethan stumbled out of bed, disoriented by the flashing red emergency lights that had replaced the usual gentle night glow. His door slid open just as Vix's did, and they nearly collided in the hallway between their quarters. "What's happening?" Vix asked, her hair wild from sleep, wearing only a thin sleep shirt that made Ethan's brain momentarily forget there was an emergency. "Hull breach alarm," he said, checking his wrist display. "Section C, 3 levels down." "They're sealing it off, but—" The station shuddered, a deep groan of metal under stress that made them both grab for the wall. "But it's bigger than they thought," Ethan finished. "Attention all personnel," the station AI announced, its usually calm voice carrying an edge of urgency. "Emergency protocols in effect. All residents must proceed to their designated shelter zones. Repeat, proceed to shelter zones immediately. That's... Vix checked her own display. That's the lab storage area. 6 sections away. Mine's the engine room. Opposite direction. Ethan's mind raced. Station protocol was clear. In a major emergency, you went to your assigned shelter based on your job function. Engineers to engines, scientists to labs, medical to medbay. It was about making sure the right people were in the right place if systems failed. It was also going to separate them. Another shudder ran through the station, harder this time. The lights flickered. "We need to go," Vic said, but neither of them moved. "Yeah," Ethan agreed, also not moving. They stared at each other in the flashing red light, and Ethan saw his own fear reflected in her golden eyes. Not fear of the hull breach, they'd both trained for emergencies, but fear of something happening to the other while they were apart. "Ethan, I know. If something happens, nothing's going to happen." He grabbed her hand, squeezing hard. "The breach is 3 levels down, they're already sealing it. This is just protocol. We'll be back here in a few hours complaining about lost sleep. You're a terrible liar. I know." He pulled her close, kissing her hard and fast. "Go, get to the lab. I'll see you when this is over. Promise?" "I promise." Vix kissed him once more, then pulled away and ran toward her designated shelter. Ethan forced himself to turn the opposite direction, toward the engine room. He'd made it maybe 20 steps when the station lurched violently, throwing him against the wall. The lights went out completely for 3 seconds, 3 eternal seconds of darkness and the screaming of stressed metal, before the emergency systems kicked in. When the dim backup lighting returned, Ethan's display was flashing a new message. Secondary breach. Section B compromised. Shelter zones reassigned. His blood went cold. Section B, that was between here and the lab storage. The route Vix would have taken. He pulled up the new shelter assignments. His was the same engine room. But Vix's? Laboratory personnel. Shelter zone compromised. Proceed to nearest alternative. Engineering Bay. Engineering Bay. His location. Ethan started running. He found her 2 corridors away. Standing at a sealed emergency door, her palm pressed against the control panel that blinked red. Sealed. No override. "Vix," she spun, relief flooding her features. "Ethan, the door, I can't get through." "The whole section's sealed, I know." New shelter assignments came through. "You're supposed to come to Engineering Bay 3 with me, but this route is sealed. We go together the long way around." He grabbed her hand. "Come on." They ran through corridors that groaned and shuddered, past other personnel heading to their own shelters, through sections where the air tasted recycled and thin. Twice they had to detour around sealed doors. Once they had to climb through a maintenance shaft when a corridor lost pressure. Finally, they tumbled into Engineering Bay 3, a reinforced section designed to shelter engine personnel during emergencies. About 30 people were already there, huddled in groups checking displays, talking in low, worried voices. Ethan found them a spot against the far wall, in a small alcove between 2 equipment lockers that offered a semblance of privacy. They sank down, breathing hard, and the reality of the situation hit them. They were safe. Together, but trapped here until the all clear. "Well," Vic said after a moment, "this isn't how I imagined our next date going." Despite everything, Ethan laughed. "No meteor shower observation deck? Not unless there's a window in here I'm missing." She leaned against his shoulder and he wrapped his arm around her. "Thank you for coming to find me. I promised I'd see you after. I keep my promises." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the updates coming through. The hull breaches were contained. No casualties. Repairs would take hours, but they were no longer in immediate danger. "Ethan," Vic said softly, "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you before, but I was scared." He pulled back to look at her. "What is it?" Vix took a deep breath. "Before I came to the station, before I requested a posting here, my people, the Kailari Council, they gave us briefings about working with humans. Official briefings, not just warnings. They told us about your species, your history, your capacity for violence." Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Vix, let me finish, please." She took his hand, holding it tightly. "They showed us footage. From your wars, your conflicts, things humans have done to each other throughout your history, and they told us very clearly that humans were dangerous. that we should maintain professional distance, that we should never ever allow ourselves to become emotionally attached. And you still moved in with me, Ethan said quietly. I told you. I saw you help that maintenance worker, and I thought maybe the council was wrong. Maybe they didn't understand. She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. But it wasn't until tonight, until I saw you running through those corridors to find me, that I realized something. What? They were right. Humans are dangerous. She cupped his face with her free hand. You are dangerous, Ethan. You make me want things I was told never to want. You make me feel things that terrify me. You make me willing to risk everything, my career, my standing with my people, my future, just to be near you. And I don't care anymore. I don't care what they said, what they warned, what they think will happen. Because when that station shook and I thought I might not see you again, I realized something else. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I love you. I'm in love with you, Ethan. And that's the most dangerous thing of all. For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this incredible woman, this incredible person who'd just handed him her heart despite every reason not to. Say something, Vix whispered. And for the first time since he'd known her, she looked truly uncertain. Your people were right, Ethan said finally, and watched her face fall. Humans are dangerous. We're emotional, irrational. We make stupid decisions based on feelings instead of logic. He pulled her closer until their foreheads touched. And right now I'm about to make the most dangerous, emotional, irrational decision of my life. What's that? I love you too. He kissed her softly. I'm in love with you, Vix, completely, terrifyingly, no going back in love with you. Her smile could have lit the entire station. Yeah. He kissed her again, deeper this time. Your people warned you about humans, and they should have. Because now that I have you, I'm never letting go. Promise? I promise. They kissed in the flickering emergency lighting, surrounded by strangers in a shelter bay designed for crisis, and it was the most perfect moment of Ethan's life. You know, Vix murmured against his lips, when we get out of here, I'm going to need to send a message back to Kalos. Oh? Going to tell them they were wrong about humans. Were they? Absolutely. She grinned, that mischievous expression he'd come to love. They said you were dangerous. They forgot to mention you were also irresistible. Ethan laughed, pulling her into his lap, not caring who saw. I think the exact same thing about you. Then we're both in trouble, the best kind of trouble. Hours later, when the all clear finally sounded and they made their way back to their quarters, exhausted and covered in maintenance dust, they didn't separate at their doors. Stay, Ethan said, not a question this time. Yes, Vix answered and followed him inside. They fell into his bed together, fully clothed, too tired for anything but holding each other. But as Ethan drifted off with Vix's head on his chest, her long black hair spread across his pillow, he knew everything had changed. Tomorrow, they'd face whatever consequences came from loving across species lines. Tonight they just held each other, and that was enough. Morning came with soft light and softer revelations. Ethan woke to find Vix still curled against him, her violet skin warm against his chest, her breathing deep and even. Her long black hair cascaded across his pillow like silk darkness, and he couldn't resist running his fingers through it gently. She stirred, golden eyes opening slowly, and smiled up at him with a sleepy contentment that made his heart ache. Hi, she whispered. Hi yourself. We fell asleep. We did. In your bed, is that too? Vix propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with an expression that was equal parts tender and amused. No regrets? Not a single one. Ethan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, marveling at how the morning light made her skin seem to glow. You? Only that we wasted 3 months pretending we didn't feel this way. She leaned down, kissing him slowly, thoroughly, taking her time. We could have been doing this the whole time. Technically, you did try to proposition me that first night. I was dying, and you're still bringing up that I called you human too many times? But she was laughing. That beautiful sound that made Ethan want to collect it, save it, replay it whenever the universe felt too big. They lay there for a while, trading lazy kisses and softer words until reality started creeping back in. Jobs to return to, questions to answer. A future to figure out what happens now, Vix asked, tracing patterns on his chest with her finger. I don't know how this works. Interspecies relationships aren't forbidden, but they're not exactly common either. We figure it out, Ethan said simply. Together. Isn't that what you said? We learn together? I did say that. She bit her lip and he could see her overthinking. But Ethan, my contract here is only for another 8 months. After that, I'm supposed to return to Kalos for reassignment. And your posting is here for at least another 2 years. Then we'll request transfers. Or extensions. Or what? You'd leave everything you've worked for? Your career, your posting, for you? Ethan interrupted, sitting up and pulling her with him. In a heartbeat. Vix, I've spent my whole life reaching for the stars, trying to get as far from Earth as possible. And you know what I've learned? What? That home isn't a place. It's not a planet or a station or a set of coordinates in space. He cupped her face in both hands. Home is you. Wherever you are, that's where I want to be. Vix's eyes filled with tears. He'd learned that Kalari cried just like humans, crystalline drops that caught the light. That's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever said to me. I mean it. Every word, I know you do. That's what makes it so terrifying. She kissed him fiercely, because I feel the same way. I'd give up my research position, my standing with the council, everything, just to stay with you. Then we're both idiots. The best kind of idiots. They were interrupted by a chime at the door. 3 short tones that indicated an official station. Communication, Ethan groaned, reluctantly extracting himself from the tangle of limbs and blankets. He pulled on a shirt and opened the door to find a message drone hovering in the corridor, a small data pad clutched in its mechanical grip. Delivery for engineer Ethan Carver and researcher Vix Thalon. It announced in its flat mechanical voice. Joint summons to station commander's office, 1400 hours today. Attendance mandatory. Ethan's stomach dropped. Acknowledged. The drone deposited the data pad and zipped away down the corridor. Well, Vix said from the bed. Having heard everything, I suppose we're not as subtle as we thought. Does it matter? Ethan asked, returning to sit beside her. I meant what I said. I'm not hiding this, hiding us. Even if it costs you. Even then. He took her hand. Whatever the commander wants to say, we face it together. Agreed? Agreed. They spent the rest of the morning in quiet preparation, showering separately, though it took considerable willpower, getting dressed, pretending to eat breakfast while mostly just staring at each other across the table. At 13:45 hours, they walked together toward the command section, hands linked, drawing curious stares but not caring. The commander's office was exactly as imposing as expected, all metal and glass and the cold efficiency of military design. Commander Rakesh, a stern human woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing, watched them enter. Engineer Carver, researcher Thalon. Sit. They sat, still holding hands. Rakesh studied them for a long moment. I suppose you know why you're here. We can guess, Ethan said evenly. During last night's emergency, no fewer than 7 personnel reported seeing you two in compromising positions, in the shelter bay, very publicly. Vix's skin darkened with a blush, but she kept her chin up. With respect, Commander, we weren't doing anything inappropriate. We were simply in love. Rakesh interrupted, and to their surprise, her stern expression softened slightly. Yes, I gathered that. The entire station has gathered that, actually. You two aren't exactly subtle. Ethan and Vix exchanged glances. Are we being reassigned? Ethan asked. That depends. Rakesh leaned back in her chair. Station regulations don't forbid interspecies relationships. They're unusual, yes, and they come with their own complications, but they're not against the rules. However, there are protocols that must be followed. She pulled up a holographic display between them. First, you'll need to file official documentation acknowledging the relationship. Second, you'll both undergo counseling sessions with Dr. Omarion, our interspecies relations specialist. He'll help you navigate cultural differences, biological considerations, and long-term planning. That's it? Vix asked, sounding stunned. Were you expecting something else? I was expecting to be sent home, Vix admitted. To be told I'd violated protocols, disgraced my people. Your people, Rakesh interrupted gently, sent a communication to my office 3 days ago. Vix went very still. They did? Apparently someone has been watching your research reports very carefully. Your efficiency has increased 47% in the last 3 months. Your breakthrough on atmospheric adaptation protocols, which I'm told will revolutionize how we terraform stations, happened during this period. And your overall happiness quotient, which we monitor for all personnel, has skyrocketed. Rakesh smiled, a rare expression that transformed her entire face. The Kelari Council wanted to know what had changed. What was making their brilliant researcher suddenly even more brilliant? So I told them. You told them about Ethan? Vix whispered. I told them you'd found something worth working for. Someone who made you want to be better, do better, reach higher. Rakesh looked between them. And do you know what they said? What? Ethan asked, his heart pounding. They said, perhaps we were wrong about humans after all. Rakesh closed the holographic display. So no, researcher Thalan, you're not being sent home. In fact, your contract has been extended, if you want it, for another 3 years. To align with Engineer Carver's posting, Vix made a small sound, half laugh, half sob, and squeezed Ethan's hand so hard it almost hurt. As for you, Carver, Rakesh continued, your performance has also been exemplary. You've been helping researcher Thalan with station adaptations that have improved quality of life for all our non-human personnel. You've been learning Kelari language and customs. You've been, in short, exactly the kind of bridge builder we need in interspecies relations. I just wanted to understand her better, Ethan said. And that, Rakesh said softly, is exactly the point. Love, real love, makes us want to understand each other better. It breaks down walls, crosses divides, builds connections across the vast emptiness of space. She stood and they rose with her. You two are proof that different species can not only coexist but thrive together. The Council wants to study your relationship. Use it as a model for future postings. We're a case study? Vix asked, torn between amusement and horror. Your hope, Rakesh corrected. You're proof that warnings and fears and protocols matter less than connection, less than love. She moved around the desk, her expression serious again. But I won't lie to you, it won't be easy. There will be challenges you can't imagine yet. Biological differences, cultural misunderstandings, people who will judge you for choosing each other. We know, Ethan said. And you're willing to face all of that? Ethan looked at Vix, at her golden eyes and violet skin, and the way she was looking at him like he'd hung every star in the sky just for her. For her? He said. For us? Absolutely, Rakesh nodded, satisfied. Then you're dismissed. File your paperwork by end of week. And Carver? Thalan? They turned at the door. Congratulations. Not many people find what you found. Don't take it for granted. We won't, Vix promised. They made it exactly 3 steps down the corridor before Vix launched herself at Ethan, throwing her arms around his neck and kissing him with such joy that he stumbled backward into the wall. 3 more years, she said between kisses. 3 more years together. 3 more years to figure out if this is forever. It is forever, Ethan said with absolute certainty. But I'll take the 3 years to prove it to you. You already have. They kissed again, softer this time, sweeter. And Ethan felt something settle in his chest. Something that felt like peace, like coming home. Like every risk and fear and warning had been worth it for this moment. Come on, Vix said, tugging his hand. I want to show you something. She led him through the station to the observation deck, the place they'd never made it to for their meteor shower date. Now in the middle of station day cycle, it was empty except for the 2 of them and the infinite stars beyond the glass. Look, Vix said, pointing to a cluster of stars toward the galactic rim. That's Kalos, my home. And there, she shifted her finger. That's your solar system, Earth. 2 points of light, impossibly far apart in the vast darkness of space. Separated by thousands of light years, Ethan observed. And yet here we are. Vix turned to him, her back to the stars, making him the center of her universe. 2 people from 2 different worlds who found each other in the infinite emptiness. What are the odds? Astronomical, Ethan said with a grin. Terrible pun. You love my terrible puns. I love you, Vix corrected, and the simple honesty of it still took his breath away. I love you and I choose you, and I will keep choosing you every single day for as long as you'll have me. Ethan pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers, breathing in her floral scent, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, slightly faster than human, a constant reminder that she was different, Alien. Impossibly precious. Then get ready for forever, he whispered, because I'm never letting you go. They stood there, wrapped in each other while the universe spun around them, two hearts beating in sync across the impossible distance between their worlds, proving that some connections transcend species, transcend space, transcend every warning and fear and logical reason not to love. They'd found each other in the darkness, and together, they were going to light up the stars. 6 months later, Station Helios 7 hosted its first official interspecies bonding ceremony, a blend of human and Kalari traditions, witnessed by both their peoples, a celebration of love that knew no boundaries. When Ethan slipped the traditional Kalari bonding crystal onto Vix's finger, and she tied the human wedding ribbon around his wrist, there wasn't a dry eye in the observation deck, not even Commander Rakesh's, because they'd proven something that day, something that would echo across stations and planets and the vast reaches of space. That love, real love, doesn't ask where you're from. It only asks if you're willing to risk everything for the one who makes you whole. And they were, forever. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing. We post powerful sci-fi love stories every day. Because sometimes the greatest adventure isn't exploring the stars, it's finding the one who makes you want to stay.